Ryan Clark just snapped on live TV. After days of media critics ripping into Shedeur Sanders, Clark absolutely went off, calling out the hypocrisy, the hate, and the double standards. His fiery rant is going viral, and fans say he just shut down every single Shedeur hater in one segment.
It's unfair to a 23-year-old who, in the way I see it, is in the most unique situation we've ever seen a young quarterback be in. There are no other third quarterbacks on the depth chart getting interviewed every day. There are no other third quarterbacks being asked, why aren't you number two? Why aren't you starting? What do you need to show to the world, to the organization, in order to be that guy? There is no blueprint to what Shedeur Sanders is dealing with. That is the pros and the cons of being Deion Sanders' son. Yeah. Right? That's part of it. And so, whereas I agree with what Dan is saying, that's a fair assessment of the situation. Yeah. There's also a part for Shedeur Sanders that all of this, the scrutiny, the way he's criticized, the wordage, the wording that's used is unfair to him, but it's where he is. He has to be aware of that. It's unfair to...
Stefanski is one of an outstanding coach. All right? But why the hell isn't he putting Shedeur Sanders? We're all waiting to see the Shedeur Sanders be the guy or Gabriel, whatever. Something's missing. Something's missing with this kid. This kid talks. He runs his mouth like I could be a starting quarterback with his arms crossed like this. Get your ass in the front row and study and do all that. If I know, the whole league knows. Quit being an embarrassment that way. You got the talent to be the quarterback. You should be. You should be embarrassed that you're not the quarterback now.
Ryan Clark just went nuclear on national television, and what he said about Shedeur Sanders has the entire NFL media in shambles right now. While everyone's been piling on Shad for miming the media after Rex Ryan's disrespectful comments, RC just dropped the most real take we've heard all season, calling out the BS double standards that no other third-string quarterback in NFL history has ever had to deal with. The Cleveland Browns are in London. Dylan Raiola just got named the starter. And somehow this still circles back to the hate Shedeur's getting. And brother, what Ryan Clark revealed about this unique situation is about to flip everything you thought you knew about this story on its head.
Said today, going off of exactly what Shedeur Sanders did yesterday, and that is meme the media. He's pretty much voicing his opinions and protesting what Rex Ryan had to say on ESPN a few days ago. Now, many people, such as Jimmy Haslam and other people in the media, from my understanding, is not happy with the way Shedeur Sanders handled the situation. I feel as if he did the right thing. Everybody's complaining about him talking. How about he not talk? But act like he's talking. So, people can take it however they want to take it. But at the end of the day, Shedeur Sanders did nothing wrong in my book for him to be warranted, any negative headlines. Now, Ryan Clark, someone who's very familiar with the situation, was on First Take today, and he had some things to say about this whole Shedeur situation.
You were, the better you were perceived. So you would say it loud and proud and louder for those in the back. And we all knew that the phrase was fortune favors the bold, okay? So now we're in a position where that conversion or perversion is where we are with today's athletes, okay? Some come in, don't say a word, just get to business and let the business speak. Kawhi Leonard comes to mind. And then there's some guys who are like, let me tell you I'm coming. And when I show up, I'm going to be even better than you thought.
Look, let's set the stage here because this whole situation has been wild from the jump. Shedeur Sanders did something yesterday that has the entire sports media world losing their absolute minds. He mimed the media. That's it. He literally just acted like he was talking without actually saying words. And you would have thought this man committed a federal crime the way people are reacting.
Yeah. Right? That's part of it. And so, whereas I agree with what Dan is saying, that's a fair assessment of the situation. Yeah. There's also a part for Shedeur Sanders that all of this, the scrutiny, the way he's criticized, the wordage, the wording that's used is unfair to him, but it's where he is. He has to be aware of that. It's unfair to a 23
third stringer obviously hasn't earned that. But that's the conflict. Rex Ryan, like, I've been through it, bro. You're gonna make this hell. You're gonna make this hard on yourself. Oh, your daddy, he made it harder on himself too, but he was so good, he was able to overcome all of that. But if y'all go back in history, even Deion Sanders had to throw water on a reporter before just because he was so loud and proud and good, and they still were hating on him.
Now here's what really happened. Rex Ryan, that Rex Ryan went on ESPN a few days ago and took some shots at Shedeur. We're talking about a guy who's proven himself at every level, led Colorado to relevance, put up numbers that most draft analysts are drooling over, and Rex decides to throw shade. So what does Shad do? He doesn't write a dissertation on Twitter. He doesn't call into sports radio. He just mimes silent protest. Chef's kiss level of pettiness, honestly. But here's where it gets crazy. Jimmy Haslam and other people in the media are apparently not happy with how Shedeur handled this. Let me get this straight. Rex Ryan can say whatever he wants on national television, but when Shedeur responds with a silent gesture, suddenly he's the problem. Make it make sense. The double standard is insane. These talking heads can critique, criticize, and straight up disrespect young players all day long, but the moment someone claps back, even without words, it's unprofessional and immature. Nah, bro. That's not how this works. Shedeur isn't some random dude. He's a quarterback who's had cameras in his face since he was probably 12 years old. He knows the game, he knows the media, and he played them like a fiddle. Think about it. How many people are talking about Rex Ryan's original comments now? Not many. But everyone is talking about Shedeur's response. That's strategy. That's understanding the platform. That's knowing that sometimes silence speaks louder than words. The man didn't even have to open his mouth to dominate the conversation for 48 hours straight. And let's be real about something else. Shedeur did absolutely nothing wrong. People want to clutch their pearls and act offended, but where was this energy when analysts were calling him entitled? Where was this energy when people were saying he's only getting attention because of his dad? Where was this energy when draft experts were trying to tank his stock with baseless criticism? Exactly. It was nowhere. Now this is where things get spicy. Because Ryan Clark, someone who actually knows what it's like to be in an NFL locker room, who understands the pressure, who's been there, came out on First Take and absolutely demolished the narrative that's been building around Shedeur. Let me read you exactly what RC said, because this is important. He said, "It's unfair to a 23-year-old who, in the way I see it, is in the most unique situation we've ever seen a young quarterback be in." Hold up. Let that marinate for a second. Ryan Clark, who's covered the NFL for years, who's seen countless quarterback situations, just said Shedeur is in the most unique situation we've ever seen. Not one of the most unique, the most unique. That's a massive statement, and he didn't stop there. RC kept going. There are no other third quarterbacks on the depth chart getting interviewed every day. There are no other third quarterbacks being asked, "Why aren't you number 2? Why aren't you starting? What do you need to show to the world, to the organization, in order to be that guy?" Boom! That right there is the entire issue in a nutshell. Can you name me one other third-string quarterback in NFL history who's had to deal with this level of media scrutiny? I'll wait, because there isn't one. When's the last time you saw a third-stringer doing press conferences, answering questions about why he's not starting? When's the last time analysts were debating whether a QB3 should be elevated to QB2 on national television? It doesn't happen. Ever. But with Shedeur, it's every single day. He's got microphones shoved in his face constantly. He's got people asking him to explain his position on the depth chart like he's the GM. He's got talking heads who've never thrown an NFL pass in their lives, questioning his ability, his attitude, his everything. Ryan Clark said it perfectly. There is no blueprint to what Shedeur Sanders is dealing with. That is the pros and the cons of being Deion Sanders' son. And that's the real conversation nobody wants to have. Yes, being Prime's son opened doors. Yes, it gave Shedeur opportunities and exposure that other players don't get. But it also put him under a microscope that's absolutely brutal. Every throw is analyzed. Every interview is dissected. Every social media post becomes a headline. That's the price of the platform, and Shedeur's been paying it since high school. Now here's what Ryan Clark said next that really puts everything into perspective. He acknowledged that Dan Orlovsky and others might have fair critiques about how Shedeur handled the miming situation. RC said, "That's a fair assessment of the situation." But then, and this is key, he added, "There's also a part for Shedeur Sanders that all of this, the scrutiny, the way he's criticized, the wordage, the wording that's used, is unfair to him." Let's break that down. Ryan Clark is essentially saying, yeah, maybe Shad could have handled it differently, but the attacks on him are unfair in the first place. That's not making excuses. That's providing context. That's acknowledging that when you're constantly being poked and prodded and disrespected, eventually you're going to respond. The wording that's used to describe Shedeur is wild. People call him arrogant, when other quarterbacks with the same confidence are called leaders. People call him entitled, when he's literally put in the work at every level. People question his maturity when he's handling more media responsibilities than starting quarterbacks on some teams. Imagine being 23 years old, fresh into the NFL, sitting as the third-string quarterback. And you've got analysts asking you questions like you're supposed to explain coaching decisions. That's not normal. That's not how it works for anyone else. But for Shedeur, it's just Tuesday. Ryan Clark hit the nail on the head when he said, Shedeur has to be aware of that. He's not wrong. Shad does have to navigate this differently because his situation is different. But that doesn't mean the situation is fair. And that's what RC is really getting at here. The Cleveland Browns situation happening in the background of all this makes it even more interesting. They're in London right now, preparing for the Vikings. Dylan Raiola just got named the starter over Deshaun Watson, who's been struggling. Tommy Resse, the offensive coordinator, held a press conference addressing the quarterback change. And you know what? Nobody's asking Dylan Raiola why he wasn't starting 3 weeks ago. Nobody's questioning his attitude or his confidence or whether he deserves the opportunity. He's getting a normal, standard quarterback competition treatment. That's the difference. That's what Ryan Clark is talking about. When Tommy Resse was asked about the quarterback change, he gave standard coach speak. Excited about the opportunity for Dylan. Felt like it was the right time. He's put in a lot of work to be ready. That's it. No drama, no controversy. Just football business. But if this were Shedeur Sanders getting promoted, oh man, the think pieces would be insane. People would be debating whether it's because of Deion's influence. Analysts would be questioning if he earned it or if it's just hype. Former players would be coming out of the woodwork with their opinions. It would be a circus. That's the point Ryan Clark is making. The standards are different. The treatment is different. The scrutiny is different. And yeah, some of that comes with the territory of being Prime's son. But that doesn't make it fair. And it definitely doesn't mean Shedeur should just sit there and take disrespect without responding. Here's what gets me about this whole situation. The same people who criticize Shedeur for being too confident are the same ones who say quarterbacks need to have swagger. The same people who say he needs to stay humble are the same ones who praise other QBs for being fiery competitors. The same people who question his maturity are the same ones who were praising Patrick Mahomes for his cockiness at the same age. You see the pattern? The rules change depending on who we're talking about. And Ryan Clark is finally calling it out. Look, Shedeur Sanders isn't perfect. No 23-year-old is. But what he is a talented quarterback who's been under an insane amount of pressure since before he could legally drink. and he's handled it better than most people would. The miming thing? That was actually pretty tame compared to what he could have said. He could have gone on a rant. He could have called people out by name. He could have really stirred the pot. Instead, he made a silent gesture and kept it moving. The fact that that is what has people upset tells you everything you need to know about the double standards at play here. And thank God Ryan Clark is using his platform to speak truth about it. Because someone needed to. All right? So while all this Shedeur drama is unfolding, the Cleveland Browns are literally across the pond in London dealing with their own quarterback situation. And honestly, the contrast between how their situation is being handled versus how Shedeur's situation gets handled is absolutely wild. Tommy Resse, the Browns' offensive coordinator, just held a press conference about naming Dylan Raiola the starter. Now, listen to how he talks about this quarterback change. He says, excited about the opportunity for Dylan, talking with Kevin throughout the week, felt like it was the right time for it. He's put in a lot of work to be ready to play. That's it. Clean, professional, no drama. And you know what the media's response is? They're asking normal football questions. How will this give you guys a lift? What makes Dylan different? Why now versus weeks ago? These are standard quarterback competition questions. But here's the kicker. When they asked Tommy Resse why they made the change, he didn't throw Deshaun Watson under the bus. He said, look, we all got to play better at a lot of positions. This is not singular just to the quarterback position. We all got to do our part around him, coaches included. That's how you handle a quarterback situation professionally. That's taking accountability. That's protecting your players. And you notice something? Nobody's questioning Dylan Raiola's character. Nobody's asking if he deserves this opportunity. Nobody's writing articles about whether he's too confident or not confident enough. Tommy Resse was asked about the biggest adjustment they made this week with the quarterback change. You know what he said? He talked about travel logistics. He talked about finding unique ways to get extra reps with walkthroughs. He talked about getting off the bus and getting to work immediately. That's what the conversation should be about. Football preparation, not personality debates. When they asked if there's an advantage to Dylan starting in a neutral environment like London instead of at home or on the road, Tommy Resse basically said, we don't evaluate that stuff. If you play well, it doesn't matter where you are. Our focus is on making sure we put ourselves in positions to play well. That's a coaching mentality. That's what Shedeur should be getting. Coaches and media focused on his game, not his gestures, not his confidence level, not whether he's being too anything, just pure football evaluation. But instead, Shedeur's out here getting psychoanalyzed by people who've never been in his situation. And that's what Ryan Clark is trying to tell everybody. This treatment is unprecedented. Now let's get real for a second, because this is where the rubber meets the road. The double standard that exists for Shedeur Sanders compared to every other young quarterback in the league is absolutely insane. And it's time we call it what it is. Think about this logically. Dylan Raiola is about to make his first NFL start. The Browns are 1-4. They're desperate for a spark. Tommy Resse said they're looking at all avenues to wake up the offense and get the ball moving and score points. That's a coach admitting their offense is struggling, and they need something different. You know what's not happening? People aren't questioning whether Dylan earned this opportunity. Nobody's writing hot takes about whether he's mentally ready for this moment. Nobody's bringing up his college stats and saying, well, he didn't do this or that. He's getting a clean slate. He's getting evaluated on his potential and his preparation. Shedeur Sanders? Man, he can't catch a break. He puts up video game numbers at Colorado, leads them to relevance, shows leadership, handles media like a veteran, and still people find ways to criticize him. Why? Because of his last name. Let's just be honest about it. Ryan Clark said it best. That is the pros and the cons of being Deion Sanders' son. The pros? Platform, exposure, access to elite training and coaching from day one. The cons: every single thing you do gets magnified by 1,000. Every mistake gets remembered. Every success gets asterisked with, well, that's because of his dad. That's not fair. And it's definitely not how we evaluate other quarterbacks. When Tommy Resse was asked about Dylan being a left-handed quarterback and if that changes anything, you know what he said? You're so used to right-handed guys, so you have to flip your mind a little bit on certain calls. But it really doesn't change a lot in what you're doing. That's how you evaluate a quarterback, on their skills, their adjustments, their preparation. Not on their personality, their confidence level, or who their daddy is. But Shedeur doesn't get that luxury. Instead, he gets Rex Ryan talking reckless on ESPN. He gets analysts debating whether he's too cocky or not humble enough. He gets people questioning his maturity when he's been handling grown man responsibilities since he was a teenager. And when he finally responds, not with a rant, not with a Twitter essay, but with a silent mime gesture, people lose their minds. Jimmy Haslam's upset. Media members are clutching their pearls. Suddenly Shedeur's the villain for what exactly? Not sitting there and taking disrespect silently? Nah, that's wild. And Ryan Clark is the only analyst with a big enough platform who's willing to say it out loud. So let's bring this full circle. Because this whole situation reveals something much bigger than just one media controversy. It reveals what Shedeur Sanders is going to have to deal with for his entire career. Whether people want to admit it or not, Ryan Clark said Shedeur has to be aware that this is his reality. And he's right. But here's what I think Ryan's really saying between the lines. Shedeur's going to have to be perfect in ways that other quarterbacks don't. He's going to have to handle situations with more grace than others. He's going to have to win more convincingly than others. Because the standard for him is different. Is that fair? Absolutely not. But is that the reality? 100%. Look at what Tommy Resse said about Dylan Raiola. I think he just is himself. He's got a calmness to him, a real true confidence to his personality, and his ability that guys have fed off of since he's been here. Doesn't look like he needs to step far outside of who he is. That's beautiful, right? Just be yourself. Have confidence. Lead naturally. But when Shedeur shows that same confidence, that same calmness, that same self-belief, it's called arrogance. It's called entitlement. It's called problematic. You see how this works? The good news is, Shedeur knows this. He's been living it his whole life. And honestly, I think that's going to make him better in the long run. Because when you're constantly under a microscope, when every move is scrutinized, when every word is dissected, you get sharp. You get mentally tough in ways that other players don't have to be. Tommy Resse talked about Dylan having to face Brian Flores, defense, a coordinator who likes to pressure, likes to create havoc, likes to turn the ball over. That's a tough test for any young quarterback. But you know what? Shedeur's been facing pressure and havoc from the media since he was like 15 years old. He's been dealing with people trying to create turnovers in his character for years. That kind of pressure either breaks you or builds you. And clearly, Shedeur's being built by it. Ryan Clark ended his comments by saying, the scrutiny is unfair to a 23-year-old, but Shedeur has to be aware of that. And I think that's the perfect summary. Yes, it's unfair. Yes, the double standards are real. Yes, the criticism is often unwarranted and excessive. But Shedeur's not going to get a pass just because it's unfair. He's going to have to navigate it anyway. And honestly, he's been doing a pretty damn good job of it. The miming thing was tame compared to what a lot of players would have done in his situation. He could have went off. He could have called out names. He could have really made it a thing. Instead, he made a gesture, proved his point, and kept it pushing. That's maturity. That's composure. That's understanding the game within the game. Here's my question for you, and I really want to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think Shedeur's unique situation is going to help him or hurt him in the long run? Is all this extra scrutiny making him mentally tougher, or is it unnecessary pressure that could affect his development? Drop your take in the comments, because this is the real conversation we should be having. Look, at the end of the day, Ryan Clark just did what more analysts need to do. He spoke truth about what's really happening with Shedeur Sanders. This isn't about making excuses or coddling a young player. This is about acknowledging that the situation Shedeur's in is unprecedented, and the way he's being treated is different from literally every other quarterback in a similar position. The Cleveland Browns can make a quarterback change and get normal football questions. But Shedeur Sanders mimes the media once, and it's a national controversy. Make it make sense. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you even doing? Hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications, because we're covering every single development in this story. The media might want to tear Shedeur down, but we're going to keep it real about what's actually happening. And real recognize real. Ryan Clark just earned a whole lot of respect for standing up and saying what needed to be said. Salute to RC for keeping it a buck. Now let's see how the rest of the media responds to this.